do not operate alone. The projects are responding specifically to any changes we're trying to make to strategy, any opportunities we're trying to capture, okay, so on and so forth. Responding to competitors, market, customers, your own internal dynamics. But projects don't just go, great, there's a strategy, we're going to go off and do what we want to do now, and we're going to change the organisation and they're just going to live with it. Doesn't really work that way, does it? Because you're going to fit the project change into the ongoing operations of the organisation. And in many respects be adjusted to and fit with that. Okay? So the three things have to operate in harmony. So when you're looking at prioritization of projects, what sort of criteria were you looking at? Just throw some criteria at me. What did we come up with? I know you're going to go through this later on today, but just give me a few things that you're looking at. What was this table? What couple of criteria have you got? Okay. Okay, all right, good. Someone else, what other criteria we're using to evaluate whether you proceed with the project or not?
We have strategy alignment with the projects.
Strategy, okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Cool. Because you can have a brilliant idea that perfectly fits your strategy and you can execute it with your technology. But if you miss the boat on it, in other words, by the time you get it to market, the opportunity's already gone. Someone else is beating you to it, or maybe the consumer's attitudes and tastes have moved on. It's probably not going to be that successful, is it? That happens not infrequently. We've got a few of those horror stories in Telstra. Well, you simply took a brilliant idea, great consumer demand for it, but we took too long to get it to market. Why did we take too long to get it to market? Because either there was technology change that made it more complex than what we thought, or more often than not, it was about the fact we couldn't actually fit it in with all the other things that were happening in business as usual. So we built it and built it well, great product, but we couldn't actually get it out there because we couldn't get it through a pipeline through business as usual into an offer out into the retail or the consumer or the enterprise space. So the point is these three things have to work hand in hand. They have to work, it's almost like capacity management. Clear direction from strategy, can we execute it through project change, etc., and can we get it out there through our business as usual, all the other things we're doing, or does something else have to give? Does that make some sense? Really important concept. So when someone comes and says, I want to do a new project, the first question you should ask is, where's it fit with strategy? Second question is probably the urgency. Does it have to be this week, or next week, or is it next year? Okay, and then it gets down to, can we do it? How do we go about approaching it, so on and so forth, and how do we flush that through the organisation change pipeline? Because organisations, they're not shaped. Our organisation is shaped like a tunnel, or they're shaped like a funnel. You know what I mean by that? If something's a tunnel, what happens when you put something into a tunnel? How does it get through? The tunnel's the same shape all the way through. Goes straight through. Yeah, it's pretty easy, isn't it? Just go straight through. Okay. If something's a funnel, what happens in a funnel? Sorry? Yeah, if there's one thing going through, it's probably goes straight through as well. If you've got more than one thing trying to go through at once, you get the bottleneck, they get stuck. So you think of it like that. That funnel from strategy up the top through the projects we're going to do and into the operations that we have to be able to change to make the project stick. And what pops out the end, hopefully, is benefits. Does that make some sense? All right. I won't labour this other than there's a really critical role, which I think I've probably already made. There's a role of project delivery in the ability to execute strategy is a statistically proven fact. We'll take that in. And that is that basically you ask a bunch of executives and surveys there, you can read the detail of the excerpts on. You ask any bunch of executives these days, they might not know the answer how, but they certainly know the why, and that is that in order to be able to execute our strategy, we have to disrupt what we currently do in the BAU. If I just give it to all the BAU people and say, go and make the change, it doesn't really happen very well because they're busy doing the BAU. They're busy doing the stuff they're asked to do. They don't have capacity to do extra. So the projects tend to get shoved to one side, or they don't get done very well, or they take longer, or they don't generate the outcomes. So we create these things called projects. And therefore, most executives will recognise that being able to do projects well is really important. And the second little piece there, of the data you can read, is that in doing projects well, that's one thing. It's about getting the outcomes from them is the other, is that link the strategy through execution again. And the basic correlation here from the research done by Boston Consulting Group and some others, you follow this little paradigm here, is basically that the better you are at execution, the more you are at this end, this is execution capability, up this one, and this is financial performance, you can very quickly see the better you are at execution, the higher you are up on the line, the better you are in terms of generating financial performance for the organisation. If in doubt of that, go look at the organisations that weren't very good at doing projects. And see how long they last in the business. Okay. Now, just as you were doing some prioritisation around, was that around one project or a bunch of projects? Okay, how many projects were you looking at? All we're looking at 4. Okay, cool.
6.
6. Excellent. You guys are really doing well. Okay. So you're going through a prioritisation process for 4 or 6 projects. What were the constraints you've got? Give me some constraints. Timeline. Yeah, timeline to go through. What else?
Budget.
Yeah, you get a budget, you get a fixed amount of money to try and manage those projects. Okay, all right, cool. So you've got the basic premise of it. That's what this is. Except I'm doing it for thousands of projects and billions of dollars. It's the only difference. Small difference. In principle, nothing different. Okay? In doing that, the way we go about doing it is basically we set up the very first question we work through with the board and the executive is essentially, how big's the pie? How much money do we have in total prepared to spend, i.e. invest? How much money prepared to invest next year and for the next 3 years? We're trying the number. Let's call it $3 billion just as a nice round number. Okay. We then sit there and say, okay, what are we currently spending it on? What we'd like to spend it on, and if we categorise those things, because not everything's equal. Are your projects all the same? They're all exactly the same. They're different. Just as imagine doing that with thousands of projects. Okay. So we try and categorise things into things that we must do, so regulatory, legal requirements, or if we don't do it, the lights literally go out. Okay. Then we do it the things that we sort of, we want to do, things that are more strategic. So we've got a particular strategic plan that's been authorised by the board. So in Telstra, specifically, we signed off, the board signed off on an extra $3 billion of spend spread over 3 years, so roughly speaking, an extra $1 billion a year for 3 years, finishing this year, for a specific purpose. And that was to deliver basically digital transformation of the organisation and virtualisation of our telephony network. Okay. Telecommunications network was pretty robust, but it was old, and it was old technology, which meant it was expensive and hard to change. Everyone's moving to software these days. You manage things not by sending someone out to a corner box and changing some cables. You do it through someone on a computer, changing some software parameters. Okay. So to do that cost billions of dollars over a number of years. So we made that a dedicated program. So we set that up in a dedicated program. Then we have what we call discretionary, which is basically the money that we have left over, having firstly prioritised the things that we have to do, otherwise we don't want to go in business or we go to jail. Neither of those is typically a good idea. Allocating money for our strategic programs, we've said that's an absolute organisation-wide #1 priority. So then what's left over becomes the choice of what we're going to spend our discretionary dollars left on. Now, of course, we have many more ideas and projects to squeeze into that funnel than what we had capacity. Okay, so we have to go through a prioritisation process. And we do that through basically options or scenario testing. So we looked at a range of scenarios, looked at a range of sort of investment criteria by which we're going to choose. And at this level, still fairly high level. Basically, how many eggs we're going to put in which basket. Okay. Once we've done that, we decide on options. We wind up with basically a pattern of how much money goes into each function. Think of a function representing the baskets, or the baskets representing the functions. Probably a better way of saying it. Those functions then go and do their own prioritisation. So now they've got how much money they've got. They've got an envelope of money. Now they'll go and work out their own detailed plan, taking some direction from what we've done back here, but the sort of things we want them to invest in. So it's not a case of, oh, here's your money, just go do whatever you want to do. It's, here's your money, and these are some themes or some particular things we want you to focus on. And they then design to that. And that then gives us basically our rolling investment plan. Some other dynamics we're looking at, which is what we were just talking about before I was asking you some questions, we look a little bit about what's happened in the past. past is often a good indicator of the future. So if your projects typically take longer, cost more, don't deliver the outcomes, I'm probably going to think a bit hard about how much money I'm going to give you. The track record. If all your projects, I'm not saying this by the way, I'm sure the projects are brilliant. If all your projects, over delivered and happened quicker and never overwent budget, firstly I'd probably say you're probably padding it all, but anyway, let's put that aside. Let's assume you weren't padding it and you were being just really, really good management. I'm probably going to think a bit easier about giving you some more money because there's a bit less risk associated with it. So when I say performance here, it's really about risk. Okay? We look at the broader dynamics in the organisations. That's really determining the size of the pie, how much money we have to spend, how much free cash flow we're going to have, what's the market's perception, where we're going to spend money, do they care, public listed company, and then the business capacity and and what our competitors are doing. They're all factors. They aren't necessarily specific criteria. So we don't evaluate individual projects against those things. We evaluate the overall portfolio. That's how we frame it up. Look, I've always made the emphasis on realising benefits. The key thing here is we have a life cycle for project execution. We have a life cycle for benefits. So married into the project execution life cycle and the investment life cycle, so from concept through design, build, test, etc., and launch. We have a benefits process that marries with that. So we don't just wait to the end of the project before we start saying, oh, what were the benefits? And how are we going to get those? We actually start that from very early on. So it's a key part of the investment criteria. So I'm hoping somewhere in your list you've got benefits or outcomes in there somewhere. Now, saying what the benefits are is one thing, but tracking them is another. So we have a model, what we call a key performance indicator model, or KPI model, for actually working out how we track benefits, which essentially, in very simplistic terms, says, what's the project going to change? So if you're launching a new project, a new product, shall I say, it's pretty easy because you'll be able to track how many new products you sell. I'm going to launch product A, B, C, and the plan is to sell 1,000 of them a month for the next 12 months. We can literally track that and say, well, how's it going? Okay, good, bad, indifferent, do more, do less, what are you going to do to correct it? If you're doing something that's a bit more amorphous, sometimes the key performance indicator is more about a service standard, or it's about de-risking something, or it's about maintaining a level of service, uptime, downtime, those things. Either way. So, before we then move into the shape of organisations influenced by change that's going on in methods and organisation changes themselves, pause there around that sort of portfolio management stuff. I think there's a direct correlation to what you're sort of playing with at the moment. Questions, thoughts, comments? Make any sense? Load of rubbish?
If you want, you can as well ask specific questions to your programs that you are developing. That's maybe as well an opportunity for if you're on the right track.
There's a quick question for me. More, you mentioned that the role of a project manager evolved in today's day and age. What was it like 10 years ago when you were a project manager, and what do you expect from your project managers at this point in time? In terms of competencies.
Good question, really good question. So but maybe just correct me if I paraphrase it incorrectly. But it was essentially asking sort of 10 or X number of years ago, is there any difference in the role and the characteristics of a project manager? And what would I be looking for as a project manager? Look, I think there has been, without a doubt, is the way I'd say it. And the reason why I'd say that, and I'll cover that off in a sec, is I think the emphasis has shifted for project managers to be more leaders. And by leaders, I mean having to be less focused on technical or domain-specific knowledge. So project managers become actually a little bit more generic, and they can move from industry to industry, role to role. Whereas I think that's probably a bit more than 10 years ago. The concept of project manager was very much rooted within a particular domain or a particular competency or capability. In other words, you were a construction project manager, you only worked in construction projects. You're an IT project manager, you only worked with software and IT projects. You're a telecommunications project manager, you only did telecommunications stuff, so on and so forth. I think now it's probably been really the last 15 to 10 years, if not maybe a little bit more, the concept of portability that project management is a set of core competencies that pretty much most leaders should have, whether formally or informally. They should have those skills. You guys are pursuing a formal recognition of it, which is great. Absolutely encourage you to do so. Having done it myself and made it my career for 30 odd years. Started when I was 10, in case you're wondering. So I think these days the recognition is that in many more instances, project managers can cross industries and cross domains. And I think they have to, frankly, because organisations are changing shape. So that's the first one. That's all about portability and I think leadership. The other aspect is I hate the terminology, so I'm going to not use it. A lot of people, I'll use it only by reference. A lot of people talk about soft skills. Project managers having soft skills. I prefer to think of them as people management and human management and stakeholder management skills. Okay. I think in many respects in the past, project managers were regarded as managing the technical aspects of a project, manage delivery, manage the schedule, manage cost. And it wasn't your job to manage behaviour and expectations and people and challenges. That is complete another BS. I'm allowed to say that. Okay. And I've been polite. It is, I think it's absolutely the role of project managers and project professionals in general. That projects don't operate in a vacuum. They operate in change, and people are part of change. So you've got to manage those humanistic skills. That's the second big one. There's a lot more recognition of that these days. A lot more focus around managing behaviour, not just managing technical aspects. And I think the other thing I would say is that project managers have had to learn to expand their toolkit. And by that, what I mean is, probably 10 years ago, and maybe it's only really in the last 5 years or even less, is I think there was a generalisation, and I personally found because I've always used and abused all the methods of delivery known to humankind. So I'm a big believer in having a toolkit. But I think for many project managers, I'm an agile project manager, or I use Prince 2, or I use some other form of waterfall, or I use Lean or Six Sigma or whatever your poison was, right? I think for some project managers, and it was probably a reasonable portion, regarded themselves as operating in that particular methodology or delivery framework. Okay? I think what we're seeing these days, broadly speaking, is people saying, well, actually, they are all perfectly valid methods, and the better project managers will take them all, put them all in their toolkit, and when they go to a particular job, they'll go, what's this job need? Okay? What can I take out of the toolkit and use for this job? Might be one or the other, or it might be a few bits of everything. Okay? Think about like a tradie. If a tradie rocks up to your job trying to fix something at your house or whatever, and they open up their toolkit and they've only got a hammer, what's your immediate thought? What's your immediate thought?
Where's the nail?
Where's the nail? And maybe the job that you want to fix was not a nail. Okay? I mean, a hammer will do some jobs. There's no doubt about it. Might even get you through a few others. Occasionally, my father-in-law, he was not particularly technically competent, and he only had 2 tools in the house, basically a hammer and a pair of pliers. And he felt everything could be done with that, with a bit of gaffer tape and some wire. You can fix anything with that, and to a certain degree, you can innovate and fix a few things. But to get to a job where you simply needed some better tools or some wider range of tools. So I look at it in that perspective. You feel free to use that analogy if you want about the toolkit. I think it's a really important one. I've always believed in putting as many tools in a toolkit as possible, and I think that's an evolution. There is a slight risk about that at the moment. There's a degree of religiousness emerging again around the next wave of agile. That everyone's got to be agile, and agile is a new thing, and that means the other methods are no longer relevant, useful, and what we're ever using those for. That's a real fallacy in my view. I don't want to get involved in methodology wars. I'd rather use all the methodologies and have victory at the end. So if someone says to you, only learn about agile, they're setting you up to fail, because I can guarantee one thing about agile. And agile's not new, by the way. It's been around about 30 years. I remember using it before it was even called agile. It was called rapid application development, or it was called just-in-time planning. But it was basically agile. And there's some wonderful things about agile, and I use it along with all the other methods. But I'll guarantee one thing about agile. 5 years from now, organisations and project managers and consultants will be talking about some other method, because it will evolve. So I wouldn't paint myself in too many corners. So, okay? questions about sort of that planning, prioritisation, the role of PMO? So the PMO plays a really critical role as an advisor and a shaper. In my own case, an organisation, we have quite a lot of direct influence in that decision making, which is a bit rare. It's good what the relationship we have with the CEO, having worked with him before in another organisation. And we have quite a specific role in allocating, which is not necessarily right or wrong. It's just a little bit unusual. Many organisations are more advisory. Ours is more direct control. I literally control the purse strings. Sorry, you had a question, Dave?
Yeah, just something you touched on before about the importance of soft skills or bigger skills, which I'm a big believer in. We often get taught about this, the triangle of scope and cost, and this is immovable. What's your thinking around when you talk about we've got to have soft skills because they're critical and they shape all of this? How do you see that fitting in with the triangle which governs everything?
Let me first say it, triangle, right? Strengths, all of that. It doesn't matter which order, time, quality, or scope and cost. Okay. It's missing a big piece for a start. It really should be a diamond. You've got outcomes and benefits, right? So that's the reason you do all that activity above the line is to generate, well, it really should be the other way around. That's activity below the line. Really trying to drive the outcomes and benefits back to what we said at the start. That's really critical for a start. And then I'd add, this thing in the middle is stakeholders. Because you only deliver change through project, you only deliver project change through people. I've yet to run a project or see a project run in many years, the 1 or 2 years I've been involved in it, I'm relatively young, in which they ran in a vacuum where they did not require people, effort, decision, did not impact people's emotions or jobs or change or something like that. So if you're not operating in something like that, or people are trying to tell you, hold on, this is where a project happens, and there's no people, there's no stakeholders, there's no emotion, there's no connection, there's no behaviour that you've got to influence. You run as fast as you can. Either change who you're dealing with, and you can't convince them, get out of there really quick, because you're on the road to hell. Okay. That makes some sense. Yeah. So I think because you're dealing with people intrinsically and explicitly in change and projects, matter of fact, in everything you do in life. Go to the corner store, buy. I can't say pack of cigarettes. No one smokes these days. So go to the corner store and buy a pack of lollies. How do you do it? What's the process? What do you do? There isn't a pack of lollies lately. Pack of chips, milkshake, coffee. Right? How do you do it? What happens? What happens? What goes on? You just walk in, the coffees are all there just waiting, you take one off the table and you walk out again? No. Good shop, if you know where that shop is, by the way, let me know. What do you do? You interact with someone. Yeah. People, right? You can go to a machine and bend it. There's usually someone behind the machine supporting it. If it breaks down, you're going to go talk to someone behind the desk. Hey, the machine's not working, took my money, just get some coffee, it's not hot, whatever. Nothing operates in a vacuum. And that within the vacuum is people. No, sorry, outside the vacuum is people. So to me, and I'm trusting you're going through this, is evolving those people management skills, the ability to influence, to be able to communicate. So because project managers have, on a scale from here being 0 to here being 10, which my arms are longer sometimes, courtesy of being short, how much influence do project managers have to directly make decisions and change things in a project? Is it like none? Or is it they've got full, unfettered, discretionary authority to change things, make decisions, do whatever they want? Well, where do they sit on a project? Roughly. There's no wrong or right answer. Just where do they sit? Is it no authority whatsoever? Or they've got absolute, carte blanche authority?
Halfway through.
About halfway through?
Depends on the organization.
It can depend. Some project managers can have a much bigger authority and more direct authority than others, but generally speaking, no project manager has full authority to just categorically go and do whatever they want. Because why? They're always answerable to someone else, and it's not their money, usually speaking. Okay. So with that, how do you then manage all the dynamics of change and problems and issues and risks and things that happen, decisions that are being made, if you're a project manager and you don't have unfettered authority. You've got to be able to influence. You've got to be able to get decisions out of people. To do that, you've got to be able to sort of negotiate, so on and so forth. These are not technical skills. They are behavioural. They influence. They are people-orientated skills. You do these things every day with your family, with friends, with Robert, with whoever else you're negotiating with and working with every day. No different in a project. Just because you step in a project doesn't mean those skills go away. Can't labour it enough. The best project managers I work with understood that dimensioning before anyone else even talked about it. When everyone ever spoke about the triple constraints, they understood that was an iceberg or a diamond, what do you want to call it, right? Diamond sounds nice because diamond's more valuable than an iceberg. Or maybe not in the context of climate change and stuff like that. But good project managers understood that, and they understood that. They didn't just have that technical competency. I had to know the toolkit and know how to use it, but also knew how to get others to accept it and understand what I was doing, and to give me permission and authority and support what I was doing. Make sense? Okay, cool. Let's move on. Oh, sorry. I was really burning critical questions. Yes, you go.
You're mentioning about like the executive support for too long,
Yeah.
and but in some cases, like they forget about their role as the support for female,
Yep.
and also what the female do in organization. Do you have any leadership and how your support is beneficial?
It's a really tough one, and I wasn't being sort of frivolous in saying if you don't have executive support, get the hell out of there sort of thing. That is true, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Okay. Now, one of the key ways to get executive support is you've got to do a little bit of work as a PMO leader. A little bit of work is to find out who should care about what I'm doing. If no one in the organisation, if none of the executives care about what you're doing, that planning bit or the governance bit or the method or whatever the scope of the PMO's role and function is, somewhere along that continuum, if no one cares about it, then you've got two choices. Get the hell out of there, right? Or you try and build a value proposition, explain to them why they should care. What is it, the value that you bring? If you're not sure about that, you can't answer it for yourself, then you've got a bit more work to do. Okay? That's the first thing. Have a value proposition. So when you get in the elevator with the CEO or the CFO or someone else, you can explain to them the famous elevator pitch, what we're doing and why it's important, how we're trying to help you. Now, the main thing PMOs do, when you think about it, is help executives make decisions. You're trying to do it right here. You're emulating the executive making decisions about what we're going to invest. You're doing the baskets and eggs in a basket exercise. Because you've only got a certain amount of dollars or capacity. You've got more things than probably what you can afford to do, or you're trying to stack rank them in something or other because of capacity or whatever. Okay? You got to sell that story to the executive. And the second thing you can do is to bring them inside the tent. And by that I mean, really simply, I think too many PMOs, in my experience, try and do all the things they do, all the processes and the role and the reporting and all that, but they do it out of habit, and they don't actually do anything provocative with it. So it's one thing to generate a set of reports about what's happening in the portfolio, its status, maybe a few things not working, what we're planning, what's in the pipeline, what's about to start, what's finishing, all those wonderful things, right? You can do all that reporting to high heaven, all right? But unless you provide to the executive some insight out of that, and by insight, I mean, these are the problems we have or the opportunities we have, and here's the decision that's needed. If you can take those next steps beyond the data, beyond the report, and say, these are the insights, and you form that up into a set of decisions that need to be made, and you take that to the executive, so you find an avenue to get that to the executive, or whoever the key decision makers are, well then you're doing two things. Firstly, you're showing some value, because you're highlighting some issues or things that need to be resolved. Secondly, you're giving them a pathway to resolve it, because you're putting some options up or recommendations for a decision. And thirdly, because you can't make the decision, because you don't have absolute authority, or if you do, good luck, you don't need the executive, even better. Because you don't have that absolute authority, you're inviting them inside the tent to make a decision. So you bring them back into your world. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
So suddenly you're proving value, but you're also giving them a job to do. So that's a big part of what I do. Because I could go away and assume some authority and make some, and I do, to various degrees. I've got some formal authority, some formal delegated authority, then I assume a bit more, because I always like to stretch the boundaries a little bit. So I've got a pretty good relationship with the CEO and the CFO who I've worked with before. And then there's other things though that you take to them. Now, it's not necessarily that I need them to actually really make that decision sometimes, because I could probably do it. What I'm trying to do is keep them in the game. I'm trying to prove the relevance of what we do, but also remind them what their job is, which is to make decisions, to make the choices. To, if there's something that needs an intervention, I'm getting their permission to go, so then I can go do it. So on and so forth. Does that make some sense? Yeah. That's probably the best things you can do. Take the data, person insight, go and invite them to a decision. Hold a decision party. Good question, really great question. You guys are really smart. I'm scared. People weren't that smart enough in this stuff years ago. I used to thought I was a genius, but now I'm just feeling really intimidated. All right, let's move on. Okay, so look, all the point is here is if people tell you things are new and they're changing, they're evolving, and it's like pretend it's like the first time ever, that is also complete and utter BS. Industry has been evolving since Adam was a boy. If you're not sure who Adam is, you can probably go work it out, right? So the reality is that industry, technology, markets, people are constantly evolving. Yeah? All right. So with it, so has methodologies and toolkits and so on. So this next evolution that we're going to is no different. It's just all part of the cycle of change. But there is one dimension that's probably more heightened than ever before. And that is this. Historically, change has been fairly linear, or maybe even stepped. But either way, it was sort of predictable. And it doesn't mean necessarily you necessarily had all the foresight, all the answers, but it was sort of predictable. And it was relatively steady, one way or another. Change these days is more exponential. You think about, maybe the best examples, think about smartphones. When was the first smartphone hit the market, roughly speaking? Any idea? It was the iPhone. Okay, so let's say the iPhone was the first genuine smartphone, which is probably close to the truth. When did it hit the market? How many years ago? Roughly speaking.
2000.
Okay, about 10 or 11 years ago. Yeah, you're right. 2006, 2007, right? You all know, we all got one, right? I'm a Samsung person myself, but no, that's persuaded. I like to use the phone my way, not Jobs' way. The point is though, have those first phones that were launched in 2006-07, are they still the same sort of phone that's in place today?
No.
Yeah. Have those changes been a bit slow and steady? No. There's been big steps, haven't there? And what we're finding is as time goes by, the shift is happening exponentially. That's happening in data usage. We now use, this is a Telstra example, consumers are now using 5 times more data than what they were using this time 2 years ago. Previously, for that to happen, that would be like a 5 to 10 year change. It's now happening every 18 months to 2 years. Moore's law, sort of doubling, which creates all sorts of interesting challenges. You can apply to almost any change you want. Change is becoming much more exponential, much more rapid, and it's driven by some of these things: global networking, cloud, software-defined products, software-defined networks, very easy data exchange, which allows ideas flow, and so on and so forth. Automation, algorithms, artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, so on and so forth. Okay? So just bear that in mind. So when we start talking about agile, firstly, it's not new. I told you already, it's about 30 years old. They were called different things. And it's even been called agile since early 2000s. 2001, I think, was the Agile Manifesto, thereabouts. A bunch of technologists got together, so we didn't like doing projects the way they did them. They came up with agile. Still projects, by the way. When someone talks about agile, it's still project management. Don't forget that. The core skills are still fundamental. And agile just inverts the pyramid. The triangle is just a triangle of constraints. Typically in a historical project, scope was sort of fixed. That was the thing you were trying to deliver. Time and cost became variable based on what happens to scope. Things cost more, take longer, more complexity. With agile, time and cost are fixed. What gives is the scope. You have to decide that you bring the work to the project and you adjust the priorities on a regular basis. You execute here more linear, here you execute in increments. But otherwise they're basically the same. But what it's doing is, in organisations and project management, this shift to more agility. So there's 2 lots of agile in my view. There's agile the methodology, and then there's agility. And what organisations are often talking about when they want agility is rapidity of response. They want responsiveness. They want adaptability. They want the flexibility to change. Because because the world's changing. Remember that exponential curve? This is not, you're on here today, you're up here tomorrow. So if you're running a project and it's steady state and it takes 3 years to get a product to market, it's probably not that useful to you anymore. So more agility, the ability to change, etc. is really important, and deliver value along the way. But it does create a bit of a tug of war, because so many organisations were set up in an older way of thinking. So when you try and do more agility, it creates an immediate contention and conflict, and it gets behaviours more than methodologies. We'll come to that in a second. Very broadly speaking, traditional business model, imagine this is an organisation. Traditionally, you've got the executives at the top-down decision making, top-down direction. You've got the sort of bureaucracy in the middle, which is really just about how orders are conveyed and then shaped up into smaller orders. But then the people down here that actually go away and do. Okay? In an agile organisation, this is the way organisations are starting to look. They look a bit more organic, a bit more like a cell, like a human cell, right? All these little nucleuses and atoms and things inside it. I wish I should have done more chemistry. What we're finding here is less hierarchy, because where's the hierarchy point here? It's not. The leadership fits at the centre, and then it fans out. Okay? And these become more autonomous teams, and we're free to shape how things are done, rather than being told how to think, how to do things. That makes sense before I move on. Sorry. So, to put that into context, this is a bit of an excerpt from a Telstra page. We're going through this transformation right now. We don't have all the answers, but we're doing it right now, moving to a big part of our organisation about the shift into a full agile team or agile team type environment. With that, it's matrixed. And the matrix is this. You've still got a board, executive leadership, you've still got business functions. So in our case, enterprise business, consumer business, global business services, which is like transaction processing, wholesale business, so on and so forth. It doesn't really matter. It could just basically be marketing, finance, human service, human relations, whatever the case may be. So you've got those functions. Functions get broken down into groups. Groups become fairly autonomous teams. And within them, they've got their teams. But the resources, so that's just the group that's down the silo, if you like. But what fits across them are the competency-based teams, which are called chapters, which is an agile terminology, who basically bring the ability to execute into the groups. And they are not fixed teams. They will move from one group to another, from one initiative to another, addressing the backlog of things we're trying to do as an organisation. So teams are suddenly matrixed. Agile at its heart is a fully matrixed model. Does that make sense? You've explained, you've explored management models. Historically, organisations were more hierarchical models, typically siloed, blah, 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 operated almost as autonomous business units. Now we're going to this sort of fully matrixed model. So these teams here, different colours, are different competencies. They come from different parts of the organisation. They come together, maybe semi-permanently, maybe permanently, often temporarily. Okay. Very different. Within that, you've sort of got the roles of sort of scrum masters, which is agile terminology. There's roles that sort of help coach and lead these teams. But the teams don't report to them. They don't have ownership of the resources. The resources come and go. Okay? So the scrum master is more of a virtual role. But we still go from, the thing that doesn't change is we still have a strategy. We break down the things we're going to do, so how we're going to deliver it. We still work out our capability. And then from that, we get down to capacity. So the things, because there's always going to be more things we want to do than what there will be capacity to do them. So at the heart of this is you've got more capacity. If you've got more ideas what you've got capacity to do, what do you have to do? Sorry? Filter. Or what we were doing here, prioritization. Yeah, same thing. Okay, you've got to choose. You've got to make decisions. So at the heart of Agile is decision management. The single biggest behavioural shift for Agile, apart from getting less hung up about roles and titles and fixed teams, etc., which is not an insignificant shift, by the way, when you come from mainly hierarchical type or other sort of functional type models. Part of that behavioural shift is also this shift in the swiftness of communications and collaboration to make prioritisation decisions. You can probably read this later. This just deals with the spectrum of Agile and Waterfall. I mean, you can put any other methods in here. The point being that there's not, a precise, if it's here, it must be Agile. It's about how you map through. This is what we use with our project managers and our project sponsors to help them work out what method, what tool should I take out of the toolkit and use for my project. So where is my project feel in terms of the way we're going to approach it? And therefore, should I use more agile method, or should I use more of a waterfall method? And that goes to things like risk and repeatability and all those sorts of things. When you take an upper level, what we're trying to do on this slide, you sort of get a sense between things that are sort of well-defined, predictive, repeatable, low risk, there's low degree of specialisation required, etc. To the other end, a lot more variability, basically, and therefore you want to approach it in a more agile sense, which gives you a bit more flexibility and the ability to adapt. Okay, as I said, the number one shift, back to our point about people, a really great question at the back, is all this shift as we start to reshape organisations from traditional hierarchies to classically more matrix, so through functional, we've gone from hierarchies through functional into more generally matrix type organisations. You start getting into very significant behavioural shifts. Even if you did not introduce agile methodology, you still by those structural shifts, you are introducing very significant behavioural shifts. Throw agile delivery more into the mix. And by agile, I could just as easily be talking about lean or Six Sigma or DevOps. Right? They're all sort of agile-type flavours. And I'll push back to religion, lots of variations on it. So the big shifts are typically around things like delegation or decentralisation of power and decision making. Because you cannot, if you're moving to an agile organisation, you cannot keep trying to make decisions down this way in this environment. They have to be empowered to make decisions and do it in real time. Now, there's obviously some decisions they cannot make and they get escalated, right? Because they don't have absolute power. Okay. So decision management, you've got to be able to delegate that down. Process flexibility and freedom. You've got to give people the rails to operate within, and then give them the freedom to work within those. Like rails, boundaries, if you like, constraints. Do whatever you want in here, but don't do that. Okay. We're not without permission. You shift accountabilities around. At the heart of agile and agile organisations is prioritization. To do prioritization really because you're constantly changing the backlog to fit into your capacity and emerging other pressures, market competitor, etc. The biggest shift, however, is around transparency and collaboration. Because you can't make prioritization decisions. Who made the prioritization decisions here? Was it just one person did it? Let me give it to me, I'll take it away and do it. Right? You did it collaboratively through discussion, negotiation, influencing, humanistic skills. And then from an outcome perspective, it's all about skill investment management. We're still doing projects. We're still doing them by a different approach. We're still at the triage for things that don't go well. So rather, in a more hierarchical organisation, you tend to your reporting question. You tend to report on everything. You report for report's sake. You report on how many reports you do. In a more agile organisation, it's localised. The teams are talking dynamically every day. You don't need a report. Or you need less reports less often. Because you can see the progress and talk about it every day. It's one of the key features of agile. So therefore moving to more of a triage. So you know something like triage? Triage? It's where you bracket things up or put things into buckets based on their sense of urgency or need for attention. It's a medical terminology basically. You go into a hospital, if there's been a major incident, heaven forbid, a bus rolls over, 50 people are injured. Typically there's a spread of injuries. Right? Not everyone works out with the same bruise on their head. You have to deal with all sorts of different injuries. So when they take them into the emergency ward of the hospital doesn't just wrap them all up in the row, in accordance with the seat they were sitting in the bus, do they? They triage them. They look at them based on urgency, criticality, so on and so forth. You do the same with projects, and they're more agile model. Should do it anyway. The more agile model becomes essential because you can't give everything the same level of attention, and not everything needs the same level of attention. If everything is equally urgent, then nothing's urgent. Okay. Quick pause there. Introduction to Agile 101. Okay, that's hard, and I'm trying to put in that context of behaviours that organisations shift. Quick questions? Thoughts? Yes?
At the beginning you mentioned that most companies and industries are changing exponentially.
Yep.
If we think in construction, part of it, I think it continues to be like a step, a really steady increasing. Do you think the agile methodology will fit anytime soon this industry, or it will get behind and
Yes and no. Because I could equally argue that you look at construction industry, there's been fairly radical change about use of materials, methodologies that are used, etc. Role changes, so it has gone through change, and not just linear, but it is a bit more steady state. It's tactile. You can touch it and see it, right? But there are elements of the construction engineering which are becoming more agile. So if I use an example, I'm doing a fairly significant renovation of my house at the moment. Okay? So what do? We've got an architect in, the builder in, we've got them together, we actually collaborated to do the design together. It's rather to get the architect to do it and give it to the builder. 12 months later, the builder goes, how am I supposed to do that? Looks wonderful, but that's not practical. So by having the two together, we use the key principle of agile. You're seeing a lot more of that happen in real industry. You bring the parties together and you're working collaboratively on it. Why? Because it cuts down time and cost, and you get the right answer, and you get some trade-offs, and you typically get a better answer, better quality answer. By having the builder work with the architect and with us together as the customer, we actually come up not only with a better answer, but a higher quality one. And we could manage it within cost and all the rest of it. Then secondly, when it actually came to actually building the property, which is still happening, hopefully finishes in the next couple months, we didn't just say, there's the fully detailed plans, away you go, I'll come back in 12 months' time and it's all done. We designed enough of the planning to get permits and approvals. That's a necessary process for to go through. But that didn't mean that everything was fully scoped out. It meant that the shape of the house was right. It meant that most of the, we had definition about the materials and the broad shape of rooms. So a good example, we had a kitchen and we had a broad mapping of what the kitchen was going to look like, where things would fit, appliances, etc. But we didn't actually go down to detail saying exactly what all the cabinetry would look like. We said there's going to be cabinetry there and there, so the fridge, there'll be appliances. But we didn't go down and say how many cupboards, are they pull-out cupboards, they have handles, no handles. So we're designing those pieces, we're doing those decision making as we get close to doing that work. Then we get together with the planner, in this case a cabinet maker, and we do some real-time planning. We get some samples, we try it, and then we adjust for effect. Sounds like agile. We're doing iterations. So even though it's a construction project, and on a much smaller scale like building this building, it's still the same principles. So I think what you'll find is more of that happening, more collaboration, more bringing ideas together, producing a better outcome, and approaching aspects of construction in a more agile way that produces a better result. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I don't think you're going to have to start buildings completely agile. I'd like bring up a load of materials and dump them on the ground and say, now what do we do with them? Okay, let's just try to fit things together, right? I could have done that. I would have cost more, taken longer, and all the rest of it, right? Okay, let's move into organizational dynamics. Close this down. All right, I think I've probably already covered this already. Just as the organizations are changing structures and introducing more agile, there's a few fundamental tenets that change the way that organizations work today. One of the key ones is planning. Planning, just as organizations have historically been hierarchical or functionally driven, so was planning. Okay, it happened very much down, just got more and more detail as it went down. Okay, more stuff happened as you went down, so on and so forth. That traditional sort of context. No different for projects. It would happen down through the silos, etc. With the more agile environment, firstly we've flattened out. Teams aren't as distinct anymore. We've got a bunch of resources, and we're trying to fit them for the backlog. So the planning becomes firstly more collaborative. We're through the chapters that hold the competency teams and the groups. The groups that hold accountability for the outcomes. One can't work without the other. They've got to intersect. This is the intersection around planning. So planning becomes a bit more a case of, this is our capacity. Different types of people we've got, different competencies of others. That defines how much work we can do. We bring the work to the people, and we fit it in with what we can do. Rather than saying, I want to do 100 things, I've only got 50 people, I've got to go get more people. Because what we're recognising is typically funding is finite, even in a hierarchical organisation. So we're flipping that to say, actually, we've got 50 people, you might have 100 ideas, but we can only do 30 things. What's the 30 things we're going to squeeze in there? What's the prioritisation like we're doing right now? And then it evolves, because classically it's recognising that with more agile environments driven by that exponential change, influenced by market, customer, so on, competitors, so on and so forth, is your plan that you set today is probably only good for a relatively short period. Strategic plan, fine. You want to set that and not go changing that every 5 minutes. That's about where you want to be at a certain period of time and sort of markets and customers you want to service. Okay? There's that how you get there. The how you get there bit becomes very different and more flexible, more responsive. Has to. Okay? Because even in waterfall and hierarchical organisations, all that change is happening. We should fight. It sort of embraces it. Doesn't mean you accept it all. You can't do all 100 things you want to do. That's still, you know, you sort of recognise the work from scratch. But you embrace the fact that prioritisation is the right thing to do. It also changes the way finances work because you've got fixed, you flip the money, which actually really, what does money do? It really just defines the resource you can afford. So money is really just a language for how many resources you have, right? It's a common currency, right? That becomes the fixed base, okay? And then you bring the work to people. And so you can probably mull it over a little bit more, but it's sort of a supply and demand equation is at the heart of Agile, which means you've got to have the collaboration and you've got to have the transparency of what people are doing today and what work's going on today. Because you're not just reprioritising or prioritising the new things you want to do, you're balancing against things that are already happening. I mean, Agile methodology itself. So this is just one illustration, right? So there's lots of variations of Agile, right? The broadest traditional project was stepped. You know, you went from one phase distinct to the next, distinct to the next. Now that was the theory. The reality was there's a lot more iterative in reality, right? I've never run a waterfall project that just run exactly like that. But that's the theory. That, you know, so you go through this sort of phase where it's all a lot of effort and requirements and stuff. You then implement, and then you got sort of, you know, there's verified benefits outcomes at the end. With Agile projects, you're still doing the same thing. You're still doing all the same, because it's still a project. So it's still got all the same elements: risk management, stakeholder engagement, planning, etc. You're just not doing this big effort at the front on planning. Now the plan's done, let's go to execution. Now the execution's done, let's move through to reaping the benefits. Here you're doing planning, execution, benefits, planning, execution, benefits, planning, execution. And each time you're looking back to maybe what we left some things off because we couldn't fit them in, so we carry them into the next piece and reprioritise them. So that's the sort of the difference in Agile. With that brings a sort of real behavioural mindset. Because the focus is, as I deliver each one of these, I should be getting outcomes. And for each outcome, I should be getting some benefit, or it's adding up distinctly to an end benefit. Does that make some sense? Yes. Oh, just visibility. So, yeah, you talk about sort of the stages that you're going through, and just how visible they are. So typically it's a good question, I should have made that point. In a waterfall project, lots of visibility at the start, there's lots of activity, and everyone's involved in planning and stuff. Then it all goes quiet for implementation. And at the end of it, it all becomes visible again, not always for the right reasons. I've delivered it and it blew up. I've delivered it and it looks great, but it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do. So it's not delivering an outcome. With a waterfall, with an Agile project, you are visible because you're doing stand-ups and you're putting something out there on a much more frequent basis. It shifts visibility right up the chain, and with that drives outcomes accountability. Personal mantra: if you want to make someone accountable for something, make what they're doing really visible, or make the target of what the outcome is really visible. Okay, visibility equals accountability. For project structures and the teams themselves, it sort of goes back to what we're showing you. You go in this really sort of hierarchical, really clearly defined roles, and then everything's dealt with through the sort of hierarchy and technical specialities, etc. This is a very oversimplified one, obviously. Into sort of more agile or scrum type teams where you've got these people on the outside. They're not part of the team, but they have influence on it. No different way over here. But the team itself is made up of people that come together, just like you're coming together, working almost like an agile team right now. Each bringing different specialities to it, different viewpoints, and the work gets carved up. So the roles are typically more homogenous. Here, they're quite distinct, quite discrete. I'm the planner for this team. I'm the sort of function leader for this team. This might be focusing on the mainframe concept. Over here is the software. Over here is the operations management. Quite distinct functions, and everything hands off from one to the other. Okay. Over here, you bring all those capabilities together. You'll work it out together. You know, coordinate, like my architect and builder example. Yeah. Very different way of thinking. Process-wise, not go back to here. All the same steps in the process. All the same steps, just done differently. And with that comes a big change of behaviour. But, back to the roles of PMOs or project support officers or whatever you want to call them, there is still a need for agile, even in an agile environment, still a need for governance and oversight. Because you're still doing the fundamental things at a portfolio level, you're still doing the baskets and egg exercise. At program and function and group levels, so in other words, the new structural levels, you've still got accountability for delivering a set of outcomes, whether they be called ethics, which is the language of outcomes in an agile environment, through to how it fits with the architecture, how it fits with the business outcomes, how it fits with customer release timing and planning and delivering something to market. That's what they're interested in. At the team type level, the sort of self-managing autonomous teams level, it's all about taking that down. So this is the things that marry up together to deliver the strategic plan. These are the work we have to do, the how work, the why, the what, and the how. By the way, thinking about it, the how work to deliver on these things and deliver the outcomes to the customer, culminating in development and releases on a frequent basis, and ideally over a shortened lifespan, ideally in a waterfall project. So there's still a governance, probably still got to manage and measure progress, still got to measure risks, issues, capacity challenges, so on and so forth. Make sense? All the same concepts of project management, just done a little bit differently. So don't let someone tell you that agile projects don't need planning, don't have a budget, can't tell you what I'm building yet because it's agile. That's very agile. I'm going to say, Bill, if you can't tell me what you're trying to problem solve or what the opportunity is that you're trying to solve for, and broadly speaking, what you're going to build as an outcome to do it, and what benefit you're going to get from doing that, and that's not a project. It's certainly not an investment. Okay, we can't do those three things. Those three things apply to any project. So the why, broadly speaking, the what, and then you worry about the how is done differently. In a waterfall project or more waterfall methods, the how is defined a lot more rigorously up front, and you go away and execute it. In a agile project, you still define those first two things up front, the why and the what. The how is very different. The how you do progressively, and it can change. The other thing, really, because of the shift in governance to a degree, you could argue it becomes a bit more self-governing. You might not have not do as much reporting, like I said before. You replace approvals and reporting and sort of centralised management with a focus on assurance. So I'm shifting part of what my team does now. We no longer do approvals. We do a lot of approvals in the centre. We don't bring projects to us. Not every project, we delegate a lot of it down. But some of the bigger ones, the bigger, uglier projects, had to come through me to be sort of reviewed, and I would take it to the executive to get formal approval. We've pretty much blown all that away now. I've taken literally a handful of projects directly to the CEO. I think I've done, since we launched our new Agile project management method 6 months ago, about end of October, I think I've taken literally 4 or 5 projects. And by taking, I mean, I've just emailed him and say, hey, Andy, this one, I think it's okay, or I think there's a few questions here. Here's how I've answered them. I think it's all right. Or do you want? Or if you're okay with that, great. Give me a tick. If not, you want me to line up? You go talk to the sponsor. Who'll actually be one of his direct reports. So I'm going to get marriage broken. Okay. But in doing that, I've actually taken that away now. I don't do any of that now, or very rarely do I do it. But what I am doing more of is assurance. So the focus on assurance is less about what have you improved and what's your plan. It's more about how are you going. How's it working? Are you on track, whatever that means, to you, to whatever plan you've set for yourself? Are we delivering? Have you got the right people? Are they getting the outcomes that you thought? Are the stakeholders happy? They're all questions that we use in our assurance and our health checks. So shift from you must do all these things, tick all these boxes before I approve it, to now saying, actually, let's flip all that. You've got the approval, you've got responsibility, you've got the accountability, but I'm going to make sure it's visible. Because if it's visible, then it becomes more accountable. If I say to you, go do something, and I don't worry about tracking it, whether you do it or not, is it on you or on me? You can argue with either way to a degree. Right? Of course, it's always on you, but it's also on me because I've let it go. If it goes off track, I'll ask you, I'll suggest you do it. But if on the other hand I say, look, it's your responsibility, you're free to work out the how, but I'm going to hold you accountable because you said it's going to be done by the end of next week, but it's my job to make sure that happens. Right? So we've moved to an assurance model. And I think you'll find a lot more organisations will move to more assurance type models, which puts a new emphasis on the PMO. Okay. Less about approvals, governance, all the bureaucracy. Still, that's all part of it. Don't get me wrong, I'm still in there somewhere, but it's pushed down a bit. It's less important, less focused, less important. And more about assistance and assurance and support. Good PMOs were doing this in some forms already. We were doing assurance previously. We just made it our main focus. Apart from the planning stuff we do and benefits realisation. Well, you could have a benefits realisation part of assurance. So what we're doing, I've talked about most of these things already. We're moving to a matrix organisation. We've streamlined governance, got rid of most error reporting. Doesn't mean we don't have data. I can see every project in our core project management system. So every project still spends money. To spend money, it's got to be in the system. So that's how money gets out to it. Okay. So I haven't given up any oversight, but I've shifted control. So I've moved accountability out. Decentralised approvals. We're focusing on triage, so rack and stack things we need to worry about based on urgency issues, how their health is going. Very analogous medical things, assurance is spoken about, and we're still, if anything, we're ramping up the focus on benefits. So project management capability shifts to more leadership and more managing a multi-mode or multi-model toolkit, and a more focus to whoever it was, I think, asked me or said before, about the people skills, about humans. You could argue much greater value add focus in services than some of the traditional technical focuses of projects and project management and PMOs. Doesn't remove them, they're still in there. Without those technical foundations, you can't really do the heightened, sort of elevated value add services, if you like. But the value add services go to, I think, the lady's question about how do you prove the value of the PMO and get people interested. The value add services are interesting because you are helping more than sort of that often perception that you were hindering because you're a gatekeeper. You shift from a gatekeeper to being a person that's opening up doors for them. Does that make sense? But you don't give up the focus on we actually increase the focus on insights. How does that happen? In a more agile model, how am I increasing the focus on progress and insights? What's unique, what's different about the agile model or more agile methods versus the waterfall methods? You asked it over here, this gentleman did before. What's the difference? You picked it up. A lot more visibility. You're presenting yourself every few weeks, theoretically, to say, here's what I've done. And here's the things that are on the list we said we're going to do, and here's how many we've done, and here's how they're working. And you literally put them into market, or put them at least into test, right? A lot more visibility. So therefore you get more insight more regularly. Therefore you can assure it, protect it, and if need be, escalate. I think we're almost there. But the mindset stuff, I think we've largely talked about this, so it is all about those mindsets. Big significant shifts around agile mindsets that go on. And so that's probably the hardest bit of moving to more agile, more sort of less functional, less hierarchical, into a more sort of matrix organisation, which the big change is happening. Everyone's doing it. Other than that, that was it. Badly project managed, 7 minutes over. Sorry. Questions? Hopefully that was helpful. Gives you a bit of insight into what's happening in real time in one of Australia's largest, dare I say, best organisations. Not just working with an organisation, believe that. Even if you're not a Telstra customer, hopefully you are. If you aren't, I'll sign up at the door on the way out. Even if you're not a Telstra customer, you actually are. You might not realise it. If you go to that corner store and buy your coffee, or you are at the traffic lights, or you're doing your banking, or you're watching something on YouTube, or you're recording something on your video, and all those things, chances are, even if you're not directly a Telstra customer, that's been delivered through a Telstra service. Either because the person that you're doing that with is a Telstra customer, as a business provider, or we're providing core infrastructure backbone for much of the stuff. Power systems that makes buildings run, all the underlying telephony, which things like all the data services run off, including traffic lights. So please, with traffic lights, don't blame Telstra. It's not our problem. It's not our fault, but we often provide that service. All those sorts of things. So chances are there are 25 million people in this country on a good day or so, and the reality is they're all Telstra customers in some way or another. Righto, so good luck with all that. Any other questions or thoughts? Desperately you want to know that I can answer? Yes, hello.
Sorry, general question.
There you go.
Are we news about the Timor won the global?
Oh yes, we did.
Yeah,
Yep.
last year. Is that agile transmission in your organization was convincing?
It was underway. So we were. I haven't put it up there, but when I first came to Telstra for 6 weeks as a management consultant to design the project management model, which was doing around PMO and portfolio management for Telstra. So we did execution, but we didn't do the planning and the prioritization stuff very well. When I came on for 6 weeks to design that for the CEO, who was then the CFO, who I'd worked for before elsewhere, basically wanted to do what we'd done elsewhere before. It was a 6-week engagement. We built the model, we rolled it out within about the first 3 months. I stayed on, obviously, a bit longer. And I still was a consultant. Within about 6 months or so, we'd actually fully deployed that sort of stage 1 new model. Prioritization, project reporting, whole new decentralized, federated portfolio approach, so central team hub and spoke, and all the functions. Stage gate templates, new documentation, new reports, you name it. Project in a box, portfolio management in a box. But what I'm changing now is not what we put in place 7 years ago. But we have changed it constantly along the way. We've put some more controls in, taken them out. As competency has been built up, we've added in functions, taken some things out, streamlined some of the technology. We have multiple tools, now we're just one. Streamlined stage gates, used to be like 20 or 30 pages in a pack. Have a guess how many pages in our stage gate approval pack? Can't call it a stage gate pack, it's actually not a stage gate pack, it's just an approval investment pack. How many pages in it? We used to have about 30. And by the way, the business units, they would take the 30 and they would make it 50 or 60. So they always complain about the size of the packs. They'd always add more stuff in. They never take anything out. I'd always take stuff out, take it to the executive. So we've gone from 30 down to, and then went down to sort of 20 and 10. What am I at these days? Have a guess. 3, good guess. What else? 5? Right, if it gets coming to throw a number out there. 1. Then the winner is 1. 1 page. If you cannot say it on 1 page, if you cannot explain the why, the what, right, and the outcome, not interested in the how, so much, but the why, the what, and the outcome, if you can't explain that on 1 page, you don't really know. In which case I shouldn't give you any money. Or you shouldn't draw down money to go away and do something. So there you go. So we've constantly evolved. So when we won, and we're very proud of the fact we won PMO of the Year award with PMI Global, there was about 400 organisations that were up for that award, 3 finalists, and we're very pleased to have won. It was recognition of that journey, and it was recognition of where we're trying to get to, but without giving up any of the underlying principles. That structure, competency, benefits, execution, governance, and sort of the financial management pieces. Not giving up any of that, but doing it differently. That's what Agile's about. That's the big Agile. That's the agility, responsiveness, adaptability. Not necessarily Agile methodology. That's in there as well, and we're adjusting for that. Again, now we're doing the next phase of that. We launched these processes about 6 months ago, end of August. The award was in November, but it probably wasn't directly promoted. We're now doing, as the organisation starts to move to its next stage, so we're doing it ahead of the organisation. Now as the organisation's moving to a more agile model, we now work with it on the next phase, which means changes in financial models, changing financial systems, working different team constructs, changing the next sort of governance. So it's constantly evolving. And again, that's a good challenge to have. If you're in a PMO or PMO role, you constantly have to ask yourself, it's your value add question. What's the value add we're delivering? How are we doing it? Can we do it differently? Should we do it better? Should we do, just if we have this services list of things we're doing, and that was how we were born up, should we keep doing all those? Can we add more to it, take some out? Should we do them differently? They're all the questions you should continue asking as project professionals in whatever aspect you're working going forward. Is that self-learning, constantly evolving, seeking input, acknowledging sometimes you didn't get it right, or what you're doing is hurting other people. Now, sometimes that can't be helped. One of the biggest complaints I get is people saying, oh, the governance gets in the way, or whatever. I can't say it now, it's all shifted, right? And what they're really saying, though, and the CEO was a smart man, he was onto this, is what they're really saying was, we want more money, right? And because the process is not going to give us more money. And And the changes we've made in the process do not create more money. We've still got $3 billion to spend next year or this year or whatever it is. So the process help you maybe manage it better, but they don't create more money on their own. So you've got to get behind what's the emotion. And that's the other thing I'd say is if you're running PMOs, is processes are important, templates marginally useful. Most people never follow them anyway, so why invest in one page? 3 simple questions. But the thing you have to actively manage and really be attuned to is the people, the behavioural stuff. How people thinking, feeling. Because if they're complaining a bit, behind it will be some truth. It won't just be the fact they want more money or they don't like filling out forms. I mean, who does? We all like more money for a start. We'd all have to do less forms. Yeah, right? So, if you can't empathise with that, you're not probably human, right? But it's a case of there are some things that are must-haves. And that's about explaining to people why we do certain things the way we do it. But also been listening and tuning the fact, well, maybe we can change it differently as competency builds. As the organisation gets better at it, maybe we can take some things down. So we have to build stuff up before we start to take it down. Make any sense? Build up competency, build up the processes, get to a point where you're mature enough to start, remove some of it, decommission some of it. Thank you.
I was going to ask, regarding the agile methodology structure, are you seeing, because employees now, a low level employees now have more responsibility and visibility, seeing them, of certain employees with specific characteristics excelling more in this field compared to
Probably not a lot directly, but what we have been running about 6 months worth of front page teams. We're right at the bleeding edge of the agile methodology. What we're seeing with them is seeing a lot more enthusiasm. They are assuming more control. Even if they haven't got it, they're assuming more control. Because they're experimental, so they're not fully autonomous. But they're wanting more control and more authority. The biggest shift is they're making decisions much more collaboratively, and they make them more quickly as a result. Because they're getting the people, they don't have to go, let's get a meeting together. They're already together. Every day they're together. So the question is not so much let's get a meeting about this topic. It's like, what are the things we're dealing with today? What are the decisions or the things that are in the way? What are the roadblocks? How do we resolve that? And you're like, everyone they need to. And if they haven't, they make that decision really quickly. We haven't got who we need or what we need. Let's go get help. So I think those are the big shifts. So with that comes enthusiasm. I think a lot more hope that they can make change and make it stick. But they are making decisions more quickly. They're making probably more decisions than they ever used to before. In the past, you would tend to, big organisations, particularly with hierarchies, a lot of decisions float up. Be amazed at the decisions that float up to the executive, and from even my own team to me, and you sit there and you go, why? I want to empower you to make that decision. And with these structures, you're sort of doing that very directly. Different people react differently and take that assumption over and morph into that role over time. Some people grab it from the get-go. So it's definitely changing behaviour, mostly around visibility, accountability, collaboration. And out of all that comes better decision making and decisions more quickly, which is the lifeblood of an organisation. If you think of an organisation as a body, you don't see, what's blood that pumps oxygen through the body? It keeps us upright, it keeps things working, right? Decisions are like the lifeblood of an organisation. If they're in a blockage somewhere, that part of the organisation has to die off. It's very analogous to the human body. When the organisations are flowing and they're getting made at the level they need to get made, head or heart, then the organisation and the organism is healthy. You can have that analogy as well. Hello.
Hi, you mentioned about the Six Sigma. So can you clarify more about the apply, and then is it possible to apply it in the contract management?
Yeah, look, I've run Six Sigma projects that were wholly Six Sigma, or lean. Look, and Six Sigma works really well for, say, cost out, productivity, process improvement type projects. And at the heart, the beauty of Six Sigma is the fact that it's so metrics management driven. So the very start of a Six Sigma project is really quite sort of tightly governed and managed, because it's all about absolute data-driven analysis of the problem or the opportunity, and then looking at the solutions we can do and how do they metrically respond to the underlying problem we're trying to solve. Then you go about through the improvement cycle and delivery, right? So Six Sigma whilst it's a lean and sort of more agile model in some respects, it's actually a very disciplined one. Just like agile is actually quite a lot of discipline in its own way. You stand up every 2 weeks and presenting what you're doing and all the rest of it. It's actually very disciplined. Whereas the perception sometimes agile is a bit loosey-goosey. It's actually not. You get cowboys that run it, but they're not really doing agile. They're not even doing project management, right? So Six Sigma has a role to play, typically around process improvement projects, because you don't want to change processes and get it wrong and hurt customers. And look, you can read about, if you just Google Six Sigma, you'll get all the hits and what about the different types of them. And even within Six Sigma, there's different variations on the methodology, but the fundamental tenets of it is that data-driven, fact-based approach has an element of try it out and experiment, but it's data-driven. And that's where it's analogy with Agile, because Agile often has, through those iterations, you're trying things. Doesn't work, you can back it out, try something different, or fix it in the next round. Six Sigma does a similar way, but in a more controlled way. So we have Six Sigma in our toolkit, alongside other methods, because it's about looking at, I said that, the builder analogy, when they rock up to fix the job at your house, if it's, I want a nail put in the wall, then they can take out the hammer and do it. If they say, actually, I want you to put up the entire picture frame for me, they might do some other things first. And so, so they might need to pull out Six Sigma before they can do Agile or Waterfall or whatever. So we use all the methods combined. Does that help a little bit?
In addition to what Matt was asking, what type of qualities would you be looking into a junior project manager in case you were going to hire someone? What type of qualifications or skills?
Sure. So generally speaking, let's take a less experienced project manager. I hate the word junior. Let's take a less experienced project manager, or senior for that matter. Take a less experienced project manager. So typically, what won't they have? Experience, right? Yeah. So they won't have a huge amount of judgment and necessarily to be able to say what's the best fit of doing this way. Okay. But what they should have is that core competence, those fundamental core competencies. So let's assume they've got those. They understand what a project is, they know what risks are, and how to do those sort of things. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for a bit like the answer to the question. I'm looking for enthusiasm. I'm looking for an ability to want to innovate, to try something different, to want to take some accountability. I might not know how to do that, but I'm going to own, which means I'm only going to go and get some help or try a few different ways of doing it. That's the sort of characteristics you're looking for. For all project managers, looking for the ability to say no. The most powerful word in their toolkit is no. Because it doesn't mean just because someone wants something doesn't always make it right. So you then apply a humanistic element of how you say no appropriately. And maybe what you say is, well, actually, no, I don't think doing it that way would be the best way because of these reasons. So why don't we try it this way, or here's some alternatives for you? It's then the sponsors or the requester's job to either say, no, I heard you, but I still want it this way, which case, fine, you accept it and you move on. So that's more that influencing. So I'm looking for those, I'm looking even for relatively inexperienced project managers, looking for those humanistic characteristics above all, because they can develop the technical competencies and refine those over time. Does that make sense? Hello.
As you compare the difference between waterfall and agile, and I know that nowadays many companies and organizations prefer using agile. So, like in your experience, is there any industry or under what kind of situation that using waterfall will be more suitable than using agile?
Well, I think it's a mix. Right? I don't think there's any one industry or organisation where you say, look, that industry should only ever use one or the other method, whatever the method. And I'll just use sort of waterfall at one end of the spectrum, and agile, there's lots of variations in between, right? Some being sort of, trying to just draw out the big differences. Take Telstra. We've been very explicit. We are not, whilst we're going to a more agile organisation, we're not just going, doesn't mean everything we do is going to be through agile method. So we've got a range, we've been very explicit about the fact we've got waterfall, we've got Lean, Six Sigma, human-centered design, DevOps, and Agile. We expect to use more Agile method over time. Okay, we want to operate more that way. It doesn't mean that we'll use it exclusively. And why is that? Because we do different types of work. We build mobile towers. We build miniature buildings called exchanges. We write fibre optic cable. We put satellites into space. You don't want to necessarily use Agile to put satellites into space. Because you've only sort of got one shot to get it right, haven't you? And I'll just put on a rocket this way and see what happens. You know? Probably not, right? Unless you're maybe the Kazakhstan Space Agency or something. No offense, we Kazakhstan. I'm hoping I picked that. No one here from it. Apologies to Borat. So what I'm seeing more of is more industries adopting that sort of that toolbox mantra. Where you do see more use of agile more often is in software development. So you take the likes of Atlassian or the Googles, the Amazons. They classically use more agile and agile type methods, DevOps and all that sort of thing, especially much more than they would use the other methods. Doesn't mean they use them that they use them exclusively. So I think you find that that's more it's a spectrum. But you'll see some industries where it's going to be more the inverse. We're still more traditional methods, more iterative methods, and more stage methods than sort of free-form agile. Classics will be the construction, where you still got to build the shell of the building to a design and build it that way so it fits together properly before you can maybe do some funky stuff on the inside. So you'll see a bit of a blend. I had a very good friend of mine, a Scottish shipbuilder. He has built battleships. I think they actually built frigates. I don't think anyone's built a battleship for long before his time, but he's seen battleships. I think what he really done was frigates and destroyers and things. He used to build those on the Clyde River in Scotland. So a lot of ships were built. And he used to make the point, as a project manager, he had the, when managing a workforce for 8,000 people, mostly, that was all men in those days, 8,000 men, welders, riveters, building these warships. They had to build them until we hit a micrometer, a micron. Because if you don't, and you've got a few holes in it, what happens to a ship when you take it to sea? It doesn't stay upright for very long. It's not very good for a warship if it sinks itself. Right? So you're not going to use agile. I'll build this bit today, I'll build this bit over here, and I'll see how. But ironically, when you talk about shipbuilding these days, it's become more component driven. So you're applying waterfall to components, and then you're joining it together. So much more component driven, which is a real blend of agile and still waterfall. Very precise, lots of planning, but it comes together. They're built maybe separately, maybe in different countries. The pieces come together. Still got to be within a micron, by the way. I think we're out of time, right? Sorry, you've been filming all day.
Yeah.
So give me a question.
Yeah, you mentioned about DevOps. I heard that term in software engineering IT, but I haven't come across through project management. So I would like to, what's the...
Look, in two sentences, what's DevOps? DevOps is basically, it's an extension of Agile, just where Agile brings together different functionalities and different specialities. So within a team, it's still temporary, it's still around a project, right? So you might be bringing together the developers, the project manager, if there is one, the scrum master, the marketer, the product manager. They all come together and work collaboratively like you guys are for that period to deliver the product or whatever the outcome is trying to do. DevOps takes it to the next level. It says, having built that team now stays together to operate it. Because having built it, we know there's going to be changes and evolutions and tweaks and things over time. The next release and all that sort of stuff. So rather than do a separate project or hand it over to operations, it actually stays together. Which is what's called DevOps. It marries development and it marries the operational part.
Okay.
DevOps. So that's the main difference. If that makes any sense.
Yes.
That is a real shift. It's another shift in the whole organizational model because it means people actually design and build something and now are responsible for operating it. So it drives even more accountability, but it also requires a very substantive shift in organizational structures and getting resource management right. In some respects, you lose a bit of flexibility of DevOps, but you've got to start saying how big should that team be and how we resource it because they become more permanently based together. Make sense? Alrighty. Well, hopefully it's been helpful.
I'll ask the last question if no one's going to ask any more questions. Just to add into manuals, he said about it, as a junior project manager, I wouldn't say the same, but from your experiences, we actually learning, right? So what do you, as a leadership, from the leadership perspective, what would you give as a tip for us when we are heading through this journey? Not from a book. I have read a lot of theories from the books, but a tip from your personal experience.
I'd encourage you to keep reading books and doing research and talking about books because, and for the simple reason that I still do all that myself. Because the day that you say I think I know everything, and I can't garner an idea from someone else, is probably the day you should give up. So number one, I'd keep self-learning. I mean, obviously formal stuff like you're doing gives you all foundations, and that's great, right? But I'd keep self-learning. Whether it be you read in a journal article, or you talk to someone in a forum, or you join the Australian Institute of Project Managers and you network with people, right? You do all those sort of things, right? The other thing I'd say is, look, probably for me, the number one thing beyond that sort of self-learning is to do, once you think you've learned something, is to do the cross-check to say, am I actually applying it? And if I didn't apply it and it didn't work, then what do I need to adjust? Is it me, or is it sort of, you know, the broader organisation? And therefore, how do I influence it? It's the broader organisation, or how do I change myself if it's me? So that self-reflection, I think, is really important, because, you know, again, we don't get everything right, and you learn from the self-reflection. So I think they're two really personal things everyone can do every day. For a long time, I used to carry around a little black book. I used to just make little notes in about something I've learned today, or something I want to do better, and self-reflect. I sort of don't do that as often these days, but I still do the pause to reflect. The other thing I would say is just try stuff. You know, we often suffer from fear of failure, fear of being wrong. I won't ask the question in case it's a silly question. No such thing. Right? Very few people will cut you down. If they do cut you down, you probably don't want to work with them. It's probably the reality, right? You've got that choice to exercise. So I would suggest brush away the fears and just have a go at things. The worst you can do is get it wrong. Okay, in which case, in a more agile environment, chance that you get tomorrow the chance to fix it. Don't brush away the fear to do things that hurt people. So if you're building a building, you don't want to make sure, look, I know it's not really safe, but I'll just leave it till tomorrow. That's probably not a good idea. So don't say I did that, right? And then above all of those, find something to do that you really love doing, and then just keep doing it. There's days of the week when I do what I do and I sort of go, why am I doing this? Right? We all have those days. I'm not suggesting you always have to be happy, smiley face and always glass half full. That's not sort of the reality. But ask yourself, am I still enjoying what I'm doing on balance? Now, if the answer is yes, then keep doing it. Keep learning, keep evolving, and keep doing it. If the answer is no, then you've got to ask the other question, is it me or is it them? And if it's them, can I influence it and change it, or can I live with it? In which case, keep going. If it's not them, then it must be me, in which case I need to change me. So the couple of times I've resigned and left other organisations is typically when I've stopped enjoying. Probably because I didn't stop learning, or probably I wasn't adding value to the organisation in my own way, but I wasn't enjoying it anymore. They're probably the big lessons I would offer to anyone. Find something you love doing and do it. Keep learning, keep the self-reflection, because that helps the learning. And sometimes the self-reflection just resets your mindset about, is it them or is it me? You sort of got to ask yourself, if you think everyone else in the world is mad and you're the only sane one, you might want to look in the mirror and think about it a little bit differently. I'll leave you with that.
Brilliant.
My contact details are there. I'm more than happy for Robert to provide you with the PDF of that document if you want to read it. But if you ever want to reach out, or LinkedIn, world's most useful tool. The only useful social media tool, in my view. Apologies everyone else for using Facebook. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. And good luck with the rest of the course.
Okay, we have a 2 minute break, and then sharp back